Hello, welcome to my hearth. Today, I'd like to share with you a story that's very near and dear to my heart. I was the kind of kid who grew up with anime. My dad watched 80s anime like Robotech, Space Battleship Yamato, and Vampire Hunter D. And he passed this interest down to me through more contemporary anime, like Cowboy Bebop, Dot Hack, and Akira. So when I say I grew up, I mean toddler Johnny was sitting in front of a TV with giant mechs and synth music. Yeah, you may have been the Dragon Ball kind of kid, but I was an Ergo Proxy kind of kid. We are not the same. So, it should be no surprise that when I ended up watching Studio Ghibli movies as a kid, I thought they were incredible. The first one I ever saw was Spirited Away on Cartoon Network, which completely blew me away. This high-production anime-styled movie with incredible animation and fantastically unique characters was unlike almost anything else I'd seen up to that point. With the exception of maybe Cowboy Bebop, nothing even came close for little Johnny. You gotta remember, I was only 5 years old when that movie came out, and while there had been other Ghibli movies released before it like Kiki's Delivery Service or Princess Mononoke, I didn't know they existed and hadn't seen any of them yet. So if little 5-year-old Johnny thought Spirited Away was an anime masterpiece, he had no idea what was in store for him whenever he was 9 years old. Howl's Moving Castle, the Studio Ghibli film released in US on June 17, 2005. Now, I did not see this film in theaters because it was really hard to keep up with stuff like this since other kids' movies were way more prominent. But I heard about it through a friend, and he said, "Have you seen this movie, Howl's Moving Castle?" And I was all, "What kind of title is that? Why would a person call themselves Howl?" And he was like, "Well, it's made by the same people who made Spirited Away." So I was like, I've never wanted to see a movie more in my life. Experiencing that movie at that age, it was like an awakening. It had the magical whimsy of Harry Potter with the aesthetics of Ghibli and incredibly subtle yet effortless world building. I hear people often cite Lord of the Rings when they talk about their inspiration for getting into world building, but honestly, it was Ghibli movies and the Avatar The Last Airbender that got me into it. Howl's Moving Castle is about a girl named Sophie in a vaguely late 19th, early 20th century European alternate reality with magic, spells, and alternative versions of technology, like planes that flap their wings to fly. It kinda reminded me of Full Metal Alchemist in this respect, as both have world building directly linking them to real world counterparts, with slightly different versions of real world technology and a little bit of magic sprinkled in. Sophie is our main protagonist, and unfortunately for her, she gets cursed by a witch really early on, turning her into an old lady until the spell is broken. She leaves her old hat shop in search of a future and a way to break the spell, and ends up finding her way to the titular moving castle, which is owned by the wizard Howl. She decides that she's going to be the cleaning lady of the castle since the place is a total mess, until she can find a way to break her curse. From there, whimsical magic and silly adventures ensue. It's a great film, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. If you need convincing, I hope this video is going to do the trick. And if you have seen the movie, well, what many of you may not know is Howl's Moving Castle is an adaptation of a book written in 1986 by Diana Wynne Jones. And I only say it this way because I didn't know it was a book until like a year ago. Apparently it's pretty popular in the UK, but it didn't really do much out in the States. I just finished reading the book not too long ago, and I gotta say, it's really entertaining and incredibly smooth to read. The pacing never felt wrong, it never dragged or felt as though things were moving too fast. And that should make sense, since it was targeted at elementary level kids and preteens. Definitely worth the read if you like the movie. Oh, yeah, spoilers for both the movie and the book. Especially avoid this video if you've seen the movie but you want to read the book, as the differences between the two made the book all the more exciting to read. So, with all of that out of the way, this video is about the differences between the movie and the book, and why both the movie and the book are better pieces of media for those differences. There are very few parts of the book that didn't make it in the movie that I wish had been there, and a lot of the parts that were added to the movie later on wouldn't have really fit in the book in the first place. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this little fun chat we're gonna have, and read the book if you get a chance. Cause whenever I was reading it, I had it in a car, and then I went through a McDonald's drive-thru, and then I got an extra drink, and then I spilled it on one of them, which made it blue, and it smells like Powerade. Oh geez. Well, and so I was so upset whenever I spilled the Powerade on the other one that I immediately bought another copy, so that's why I have 2 of them now. Okay, so I'm going to go over a bunch of examples of differences between the movie and the book in quick succession and in no particular order. Mostly because I find it really interesting and entertaining, but also to set up a point about adapting books into movies that I want to make later. In the meantime, sit back, relax, and enjoy a comparative dive into Howl's Moving Castle the movie and the book. I gotta give a huge shout out to my wife, she's upstairs right now, Trinia. She's the one who got me to read the book version of Howl's Moving Castle, which in turn inspired me to make this video as a whole. Also, she put together most of the list of differences between the two versions for me. So thank you, baby. I couldn't have done it without you. Hearts. This is cute. Before that, though, let me mention the major plot structure and meaning of these stories. Basically, the movie is an allegory for the Iraq War, and the book isn't. The book is just a fun, whimsical story of a wizard, a moving castle, and a girl who's cursed to become an old lady. So, going forward, keep that in mind as I reference the differences between the two. These generally won't be value judgments on which is better or worse, since they all serve their respective plots super well. So, let's get specific. The first person I'm going to talk about is Howl, and the way the character is depicted in the movie and the book. In the movie, he's very sure of himself, a mystical wizard with unknown levels of magical prowess. He is polite, kind, and generous to those who find themselves close to him. Howl offers his home to the orphan Markle and makes him an apprentice wizard. Howl also allows Sophie to stay with them without questioning, as a gesture of kindness. We only see a brief moment of vanity from movie Howl when his hair gets dyed orange instead of blonde. However, this is played as a comedic scene to alleviate any future or previous tension. This is important to show the humanity of Howl in the movie, as later on, his humanity will be questioned through war. This Howl represents a noble soldier fighting in a war that he doesn't want to be a part of, a war which is irreparably damaging him. He suffers from PTSD, which is visually shown in the way that he's transforming into a crow person. In the book, though, Howl is confident and sure of himself, but this kind of stems from his immense vanity. He is a super irresponsible person with money, so much so that Markle, who's called Michael and is a teenager in the book, tries to hide money from him from the spells that they sell so that they have enough money in order to buy the things that they need. Howl loves fancy suits with bell sleeves. He's selfish, sassy, and self-centered. Howl's generous actions are just incidental results of him not wanting to get involved with what one could call drama. He lets Sophie stay after she breaks into his castle because it would be too much trouble to make her leave. But he's constantly berating her and calling her Miss Nose because she keeps getting her nose into things. Michael, he found himself staying there much the same way as Sophie. He broke in and Howl just kind of let him stay because he was too busy with his own self-interest to bother. After staying with Howl for a long period of time, Michael learns magic and then becomes Howl's apprentice. Howl in the book certainly is a powerful wizard, and moments where he teaches Michael are genuinely touching human moments, but these happen as outliers in Howl's generally immature characterization. The moment where Howl's hair is dyed the wrong color in the book is meant to show how fickle and vain Howl is, rather than be a moment of humanity and levity. There is no war in the books, and Howl does not turn into a crow bird representation of PTSD. He's just an immature brat who needs to grow up, even though I think he's supposed to be in his late 20s, early 30s in the book. In the movie, Howl is particular about the way the castle is laid out and where things are, but it comes off more like a safety from the magical items and a personal space sort of deal. In the book, it's almost like a teenager with a messy room who just wants it to stay messy, to exert control over it. He wants to keep all the cobwebs where they are, and he loves his spiders. When Sophie goes to clean them, he uses the classic, "the spiders are just gonna make more cobwebs again anyway," excuse that I used to give my mom. In the movie, Howl uses most of his magical strength in the war, but in the books, it doesn't seem like he's using his magic for anything important at first. In the movie, we hear people talking about how bad Howl is, how he'll steal women's hearts, and how evil he is. But in the movie, this is a product of war propaganda about wizards who don't want to obey the crown's orders, as Howl doesn't really want to fight in their war. This rumor spreading happens in the books too, but Howl spreads these rumors himself to avoid responsibility, since he's been chasing after pretty girls until they fall in love with him, and then completely abandoning them once they give him attention. Howl in the movie has a soft side for well-meaning people, but Howl in the book, his soft side is more hidden away. He also cares a lot about his family, but we'll get into that later. Howl changes a lot in both the movie and the book, but in completely different ways and for completely different reasons. Additionally, the way each version expresses this change is completely different too. Movie Howl slowly turns into a blackbird monster thing as the war takes more and more of his humanity away. You can see this when he tries to use powerful magic and the infection, or PTSD, begins to physically take over his arm. The changes in book Howl are far more character and personality driven. Over time, Howl begins to show some of his compassion more. He reveals his family to Sophie, and he shows her how he dotes on his niece, and he really does care for his sister, even though she constantly tells him what a no-good slouch he is. We see him act paternally towards Michael and teaches him new spells and helps him solve difficult puzzles. There is this scene in both the movie and the book where Howl tells Sophie that he's known she's under a spell this whole time but didn't tell her. He says that he's tried to remove it, but the magic was too powerful, so instead, he opted to alleviate her arthritis. In the movie, this seems like something that the nice, kind, and noble Howl would totally do. But in the book, it's a huge character moment. It shows him caring for someone else's well-being above his. Yeah, he did lie by omission by not telling her that he knew about her curse. But the fact that he attempted to help her, and has been alleviating her pain this whole time, well, it shows a level of selflessness that's not present in the Howl of the earlier chapters. Additionally, Howl sought out his old teacher, Miss Penstemon, to maybe help with Sophie's curse. Howl going out of his way to seek help for Sophie is massive character growth for him that just isn't really present in the movie. If you're wondering, Madame Sullivan in the movie is like a mixture of his old teacher Miss Penstemon and another wizard named Sullivan/Sullivan, depending on who you're asking. However, neither of these characters in the book really serve anywhere near the same role as Madame Sullivan from the movie, since she's supposed to be a big, bad, evil Dick Cheney character. Like I said, most of these changes serve the greater plot, especially this one. Went down wrong. I'm gonna die. I'm so sorry. Next, let's talk about Sophie. Movie Sophie is a forgiving, patient, and relatively quiet girl with no magical powers. She's just caught up in the adventure and is clearly and knowingly in love with Howl early on in the movie. Sophie is brave, and not necessarily timid, but she has a limited amount of agency in the movie after her initial leap into Howl's castle. Her character arc generally consists of her overcoming the idea that she isn't desirable or beautiful. Given the context of the movie, this can be seen as her wanting to be wanted and needed, as she does go out of her way to seem useful at first. But this gives way to the main thrust of the movie's plot, which is about Howl's pain and struggle. Book Sophie is more stubborn and grumpy and restless. She has magical powers that she doesn't know about for most of the book, which allow her to speak magic into things, like clothes and hats and a skull and even a scarecrow. She gets cursed by the Witch of the Waste for apparently getting in the way of her search for Howl. Sophie doesn't put up with Howl's nonsense and ignores his cries to keep out of his business. Sophie's sisters play a bigger role in the books, and Sophie is deeply protective of her sisters and Michael. Her character arc in the book centers around her overcoming an overwhelming sense that she is doomed to be a failure as the eldest of three sisters, both of which already have started successful apprenticeships. Sophie in the book is shown to have far more agency. She directs major plot events and is the cause of most, if not all, the changes forced upon Howl. From them needing to move the castle in order to shirk Howl's responsibilities when Sophie convinces the king that Howl can find his brother, to Sophie letting the fire demon of the Witch of the Waste into Howl's castle. In both the movie and the book, Sophie acts as Howl's new cleaning lady as a way to stay in the castle. However, in the book, she does this as a way to snoop around his castle in hopes of finding evidence of him stealing girls' hearts. This part of the movie serves to endear us to Sophie, but also to show her productiveness and desire to be useful. Whereas, in the book, it serves to show her curiosity, stubbornness, and essentially her ability to hold up a lie. gotten progressively colder as the time's gone on. The relationship between Howl and Sophie is also portrayed in distinct ways. Both end romantically, however, much of the rest of their development diverts wildly. The movie portrays it, even early on, as a budding romance. Sophie's physical transition back and forth from old to young illustrates that Howl knows of her curse and sees through it to her true, unconventional beauty. It cements a consistent tone of growing love between the two. Sophie's demeanor towards Howl is one of care, concern, and comfort. She is more gentle and serves as the calming figure to settle the movie's more distressed soldier version of Howl, like a loving mother. The book begins with Sophie being simultaneously awed and disgusted by Howl. She sees him as a powerful but evil, heart-stealing wizard. Over time, she finds that rather than being evil, he is just an immature and vain pseudo-womanizer. As she grows to understand him, her fear turns to annoyance. She sees that he doesn't actually steal hearts, but rather just breaks them by being a fickle man-child, who will do anything to get a woman's attention until she actually gives it to him. Then he ghosts her. This angers Sophie at first, as she sees him playing with women's hearts. Later, that anger grows into jealousy when Sophie slowly finds that she too is falling for Howl, but he is still going out chasing other girls. For most of the book, he doesn't act kind and benevolent towards Sophie. He's too consumed by his own life and interest to be bothered with her. That is, of course, until she ultimately does something that gets in the way or disturbs his bubble. He allows her to stay in the castle, but he berates and insults her because he thinks she can't mind her own business. Mrs. Nose, remember? Over time, however, he softens to her. He begins to trust her when she helps Michael out with the spells. He begins to actually care for her, but continues to hide it with selfish-seeming actions and disregard, until it comes out that he's been attempting to help her for a while now. In the movie and in the book, Howl sets one of the places that the castle door can open to as a field of flowers. In the movie, this is a gift for her. It's a symbolic gesture of Howl opening his heart and mind to Sophie. It was where he grew up, and so he is sharing something sacred to him with her. It's a sign of their growing love. In the book, however, him giving her that field of flowers for her flower shop was just a way to get her out of his hair and to keep her busy. Rather than the field being an important reminder of Howl's humanity, the field of flowers is just magically growing outside the wastes because another wizard put it there. In the movie, Sophie's family plays an incredibly tiny role. However, in the book, they are a larger part of the story. Sophie has two sisters, Martha and Letty. Martha is taken out of the movie completely, and Letty has very few moments. In the book, though, one of the driving forces for Sophie is the fact that she is the eldest of three sisters. And, as I mentioned earlier, she thinks she's doomed to be a failure compared to her sisters. Martha is sent to learn magic from a sorceress, as she is seen to be the smartest, and Letty is sent to work in a bakery. Except, psych! They used spells to swap their appearances, because Letty wanted to learn magic and Martha wanted to be a baker and have 10 kids. Martha plays an important role with Michael, who, remember, is 16 years old, not a little kid. Well, Michael falls in love with Martha, who's going by Letty instead of Martha, and the real Letty is also going by Letty because the sorceress who's teaching her saw through her fake Martha disguise. It is unclear whether Michael's Letty Martha, or the real Letty who's learning magic, is the one that Howl's pursuing. This leads to perception that a love triangle might be about to go down. This is especially prominent when Sophie sees Howl at the sorceress's house, seemingly flirting with one of the Lettys, which leads me to the next subject. Since they took Martha out of the movie and reduced Letty's role significantly, the need for Michael, or Markle in the movie, to be a teenager completely went away. So the movie choosing to make him a young boy makes a lot of sense. It makes Howl look like a paternal figure. Him taking on a young orphan and training him humanizes Howl to Sophie and to the audience immediately. It gives him the generous and kind appearance we need to start off liking Howl in the movie. Alternatively, the teenager Michael of the book does the opposite of make Howl look good. Michael is the responsible and caring one from the beginning. He looks after the house and saves money so Howl doesn't spend it irresponsibly. And he takes care of all the minor spells that make the most of the money that they need. The Michael in the book makes Howl seem even more chaotic and selfish by contrast. In the movie and the book, the Witch of the Waste curses Sophie and wants Howl, But besides that, they're radically different characters. In the book, the Witch of the Waste is the main antagonist, whereas in the movie, Madame Solomon is the main antagonist, as she's the orchestrator of the war. She is an antagonist who wants Howl's heart, but she's proven to be a harmless force when she's stripped of the magic keeping her young. In the book, though? The witch in the book straight murders Howl's old teacher, Miss Penstemon, because she doesn't want to give up Howl. And what does the witch in the book want with Howl? His heart? Because she's stone cold heartless? No, she wants his head. She wants to cut it off and attach it to the body of a Frankenstein monster built from another wizard and the brother of the king, Justin, with Howl's pretty face on top. There is no redemption for this witch. She's just evil. Oh my, she sounds bad. There are a couple of minor miscellaneous things I wanted to go over before we move on. For instance, the castle in the book doesn't have legs or an engine or anything like that. It's held together by magic and just slides along the hillside like Patrick convinced all of Bikini Bottom that the Alaskan bullworm was a serious threat to it. Also, the technological landscape in the world of the book is quite behind the movie. Think early 1700s versus the alternate reality 1900s of the movie. So, no plane analogs, steamboats, or trains. Calcifer in the book is very similar to the movie in attitude and relevance, but his appearance is slightly different. In the movie, there is a point where Calcifer grows large and turns purple and blue and green. The book describes him similarly to that all the time. Not as large or menacing, but not cute and small like in the movie. Also, the reason that both Michael and Sophie are able to get into the castle and it's not a big problem as it seems like it should be is because essentially Calcifer just let them in because they talked to Calcifer. Given that, Howl just assumes they aren't a problem when he sees them in his castle because Calcifer let him in, and he trusts Calcifer that Calcifer wouldn't let some baddies into his castle. The book also makes a good deal out of Howl's various suits and Sophie's ability to speak magic into items. For example, Sophie mends one of Howl's suits and speaks to it, telling it will bring in all the ladies. And when Howl wears it around town, women seem enraptured with him. And the last thing I want to mention is the Scarecrow. In the book, it's significantly creepier than the movie. Sophie accidentally brought it to life by speaking to it, and it's made from leftover people that the Witch of the Waste was chopping up. It follows her around, giving her literal heart attacks, trying to get its head back. See, throughout the story, there has been this skull hanging around the castle that Sophie talks to when no one else is there to talk to. Well, it turns out that that's Mr. Sullivan's head, and the Scarecrow wants it back because Mr. Sullivan had put all his magic into the Scarecrow before he was ripped to pieces by the witch. Sophie repeatedly tells it to go away, and she's not here, which for some reason ends up working every time, until they finally figure out that he isn't a threat and let him into the castle, after which his turnip head promptly fuses with the skull and he's able to speak. Well, I think that's everything important that I wanted to mention. I don't think I'm leaving anything major out. Oh, that's right. Howl's Welsh. He's a rugby-playing, PhD-having dude from the 1980s who just happened to be able to do magic that brings him into a completely different world. Remember when I said Howl took Sophie to see his family? Well, do you also remember the black option on the door dial in the movie led to the war front? Well, in the book, it leads to 1980s Wales. In Wales, they drive a car around and go visit Howl's sister and niece. The whole time, Sophie's describing all the weird contraptions and sights. The car has a horseless carriage that goes too fast, and there are boxes with roots connecting them to the walls, and strange stairs with furry carpet all across them. Apparently, Howl's actually named Howell Jenkins, and his PhD was in like ancient magic or something. We can only assume from there how he found himself in another world, as the book doesn't go into further detail. There's also this whole ordeal with a teacher in Wales that Howl tries to court who already had a fiancé. Except that fiancé went missing, and his name is Sullivan, and he also is a wizard that traveled to the same world as Howl. Except, oops, he's dead and now part of the witch's scary Frankenstein monster, and none of this is explained further than what I've already said to you. Alright friends, allow me to go on a rant for a little bit. Not about Howl's moving castle, but definitely important to this video, I promise. I have this thing I always say to my friends and family about adaptations or reboots of media. If you can't add value to the original version, why are you making a new version? Something along those lines anyway. Like, we constantly see old movies being redone, or books being turned into movies, or old shows being made again. Now, I'm not here to judge any inherent value in doing this. You see, there are good and bad adaptations. There are good and bad reboots, and there are good and bad original versions. All of which is subjective, of course. I just don't see any value in redoing what's already been done. I think if you're gonna make a new version of a piece of media, do it better. Or at the very least, do it differently. Because if your plan is to just do the same thing again, with minor changes or modern technology, you aren't really bringing anything to the table, are you? I was thinking about this while I was watching the live-action remake of The Lion King, and the thing I kept thinking while I was watching was, what is this doing that the older one didn't? What is this adding? What is it doing better? And why did they make this movie? And the obvious answer to the last question, of course, is money! Some books, when adapted into movies, are much the same. Like World War Z or the Percy Jackson adaptation, they fail to add anything meaningful and end up representing the original text poorly enough to be worse off in the end. We all know about the good books that were made into bad movies, and there are a couple examples out in the world of the opposite of that happening. Like a less than stellar book turned into a fantastic movie, Fight Club. But Howl's Moving Castle is a little different. There are so many dramatic changes made to the characters, story, setting, and themes of the book when Miyazaki adapted it into a movie. You'd almost expect one of them to have failed. If so much was different, then surely it was to improve the flaws of the original, or maybe all these changes led to something unfaithful and unappealing. But that's not what we got. We got two wholly unique experiences, both of which were valuable and wonderful and entertaining in their own right. Miyazaki kept many of the elements that were present in the book, like comedic plot points and character dynamics. While much has changed to fit the new story he wanted to tell, many of its most brilliant moments come straight from the book. Now, I'm not here to say the movie is only good for the things that it took from the book, quite the contrary. I think the way Miyazaki took elements, characters, and plot points from the book and placed them to fit thematically in a relatively darker world that he was creating is incredible. Moments in the movie, like Howl acting like a big baby and oozing green slime when his hair gets dyed the wrong color, come straight from the book, but serve different purposes in the movie. Things like the towns talking gossip about Howl stealing hearts or being evil wizard are exactly the same as the book, but they mean something else when placed in the context that Miyazaki sets up. Each has their strengths and reasons to enjoy them. The movie is a thematically deeper experience as a direct allegory for the criticisms of the Iraq War that Miyazaki had. It has an incredible visual and artistic direction, unmatched in its details and world building. The movie uses cohesive visual storytelling to convey multitudes of wordless information about the setting and how it impacts the characters in the story. Whereas the book has deeper, more fleshed out characters, with striking personalities and character arcs that really give us a window into the characters' minds. Specifically, Sophie being a more proactive character with far more agency than the movie. Since the book has less to say thematically, it has more to say about who these characters are. Also, the depictions of magical things in the world are just so whimsical, I can't help but add that as a strength of the book. Obviously, I'm going to recommend you watch the movie and read the book, though if you haven't at least done one of those things, again, why are you here? How did you get in my house? What is going on in your brain? And thank you. Please continue to watch our videos, even when you don't know what we're talking about. I love that about you, friend. This was a really fun video to make. I hope me pseudo playing a character wasn't too weird. I just thought it was fun and cozy to act like a South Dakotan or Minnesotan, grandma or something, telling kids all about this really good story. I mean, to be fair, I probably will read this book to my kids whenever I have them and all that. It's a good book. This one has, the stains of Powerade on it. Let me know what you think about this video, and if you plan on reading this book, or if you've seen the movie, or if there's any other Miyazaki films you think I should make a video about for no reason. Because I will. I super will. I really like Miyazaki. There's a couple I haven't seen yet that I really need to watch, like Tales of Earthsea. I don't know why I haven't seen it. That one's based on the book too, actually, isn't it? Anyway, update that we probably need to let you know about. So you know how you may know that we stream occasionally. We make little fun videos about the streaming. Well, only like 15 of you know about that. But anyway, we decided to split our channel like a lot of people do, because originally we didn't know why people did that. We just thought, it's a big channel thing, but we realized actually it's probably has to do with the algorithm. So we've split our channel into 2 channels. We have a second channel, which we're going to link in the description down below, where we put all of our streaming highlight videos that are just fun, or we put like memes and silly post type things there. If you check that out, you can subscribe to that channel so that you can get updates about that if you're into that kind of stuff. It's mostly comedy and us hanging around. We're still going to stream Tuesdays and Thursdays on the main channel, but generally Wednesdays and Fridays, highlight videos are going to come out on the second channel. Other than that, we'll still every 2 weeks have a video essay like this out. We may change up the format or talk about different things, and if you want us to talk about something that you're interested in, let us know in the comments. I'd love to do some research on something I haven't experienced, or watch a show I haven't experienced and then go, what can I say about that? Because that's kind of how this was. Like, my wife was reading the book version of this movie that we all really liked, and she was telling me about the differences, like all the crazy stuff that happens in it. I was like, holy crap, I can make a video about that. So I spent like the last week and a half, 2 weeks reading it, and I was like, oh yeah, it's really cool, and then we made it this video. Anyway, thanks for watching. I love you guys. You're amazing. Even when you don't know what we're talking about. This man right here, my producer, as I'm gonna call him, reminded me that y'all. It seems a lot of you watch our videos but don't subscribe. That's what I see that people say that a lot. Anyway, please like and comment and subscribe. And I know that's cliche, but it actually really does help us grow as a channel and move out there and get our fun little content out to the world. And all of you who came here from the surfs, I love all of you. I'm sorry we don't do super political content all the time. We will be, but I just like talking about whatever I like talking about. Bye. No! No! No, you're scared. You know that. Okay. Okay.